Thanks. Okay, so we're starting a few minutes late here. It is 9:37. We'll call the meeting to order. And we will begin with the adoption of the agenda. Any additions from admin?
No, Your Worship.
Anything from council? Okay, Councillor Wilhelm.
A motion that a council adopts the agenda as presented.
Thank you. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Brings us to regular council minutes for 14th of September 2022. We've got these. Any errors or omissions anyone can see? I don't see any hands. I'll accept the motion.
Make a motion to move the council minutes from September 14th, 2022 as presented.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. No public hearings, no bylaws, no delegations. Business arising, 7.1. So this is Whitecourt District Chamber Commerce Events and Meetings. And Bert, take us through this.
Good morning, Your Worship and Council. We have in front of you an RFD that has also appeared at the last council meeting and at the Governance and Priorities meeting. The recommendation on the RFD after previous discussion is that council approves the participation in the Economic Forum and the Trunk or Treat event from the 2022 operation budget for council to a maximum of $6,500. We also have the opportunity for council to address this morning how they would like to make sure that we do the member updates at the chamber meetings. And in regards to the Economic Forum event, two small updates. The keynote speaker has been announced. Lucky Labji, who is a speaker from Vancouver and who focuses on helping to uncover your personal blind spots to create better leadership, is the keynote speaker. And we also have an invitation from the chamber for the Reeve to do a 10-minute presentation to give an update from the county to the business community at the Economic Forum event as well.
Okay, excellent. So what are our options here? Any questions? Go ahead, Councillor G.
No, thank you. No questions. I guess other than, do we require 3 motions, or can we just make a motion to go ahead with the sponsorship of the events? So that'd be a question to administration, I guess.
Your Worship, through to Councillor, no, you're allocating the $6,500 to economic development for those events, so that's one motion is fine.
Okay.
Councillor, go ahead.
I just, I guess more of a comment or question for administration, comment towards what Mr. Rocha said there. But if with our council days that end up interfering with the chamber meetings, is it possible if we're getting close to the time to just break or recess and reconvene after so that we can at least get the updates? And
That'd be the direction through the chair.
Yeah.
obviously, depending on how heavy the day is or the meeting.
Right. Okay, it's an option. It depends on where they're holding their meeting too, as long as it's close.
Yeah.
And again, you know, if we do break the meetings like that, then we're holding everyone. So, Councillor Wilhelm?
I wonder if this can be addressed by, and I had asked you guys, might have been outside of council, but potentially swapping one of the meetings per month to an evening meeting, if that would even solve this problem in the future.
We could. Part of the reason that we wanted to get away from the evening meetings, so the original intent of the evening meeting was to make sure that people could attend meetings that, you know, work during the day that wanted to attend a meeting. Now that everything's streamed, we don't have that problem. And there was a cost involved because we were basically running overtime in order to do those evening meetings, and Is that correct?
Well, yeah, your worship, there is a little bit of overtime. Those that are in management don't receive that overtime. However, staff that are salary employees, they do receive.
Counselor Dean?
Through the chair to Councillor Wilhelm. Appreciate the, trying to come up with creative ways to connect us with the chamber, and that could be something we walk down. I believe maybe at a future GMP meeting, we're looking at our meeting procedures bylaw for other things as well, so maybe that's something that we can look at then. Coming back to this, another concept that council had discussed, I know Bert and I had chatted, was about the county hosting, in the interest of trying to connect with the chamber and be represented at chamber events, about potentially hosting an evening get-together. And did I bring that up at that GMP meeting when we talked about this?
I remember you bringing it up at one point. I don't remember
Okay.
where specifically it was brought up, but I remember hearing it.
So I don't think that concept is related to this RFD. This RFD, we're just putting money into this, but I would like to explore that at a future date as well. So I'd be prepared to make a motion that council approves participation in the economic forum and trunk or treat events from the 2022 operations budget for council to a maximum of $6,500.
Okay, so I'm gonna accept that motion. We'll put it on the floor. Okay, does anyone wish to speak to the motion? Okay, I don't see anything, so I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried.
And then, excuse me, I'd like to make another motion, if I can. Maybe this is to direct administration to investigate what a evening meet and greet with chamber members would look like and bring it back to council for review.
Okay, we can do that. And in the past too, just so that I'll accept the motion, first of all, and I'll speak to the motion as well historically, but in the past, we have done investor open houses and some things out at the casino, and there was a lot of chamber involvement in that as well, for chamber members. I'm not sure if there was an official formal. Go
Yes,
ahead.
we didn't do anything this year due to COVID, but we have certainly done events like that in the past where we reached out directly to, the last one was for builders, developers, and realtors. But if there is the appetite from council, I mean, we can certainly work closely with the chamber and do some kind of an evening business event. And if we don't have the budget for it this year, we can work out the numbers and we'll put it in as a budget request for next year.
And I would, if I could, I would think that something like that where it's a little more inclusive of all these different groups and here's what the county's doing, what can we do to help, and kind of, plug in those networking opportunities through the county. You can get more people in a room at one time. You're maximizing your dollar spent on events like that. So
Yeah, it makes sense for sure.
yeah. Okay. So with that, any further discussion on the motion or comments to it? All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. And we end up with item 7.2, and that's policy 1408, flag protocol. Corinne.
What, you're gonna take?
At the Governance and Priorities meeting on the 15th, the committee directed administration to include Woodlands County employees on that draft policy and forward to council for consideration. That amendment has been included and the policy remains the same for council's review.
Okay, thank you. So we've all seen this at the Governance and Priorities meeting. Is there any, Councillor Cush?
So I was just gonna make the motion that council adopts policy 1408 flag protocol. Nice to have something that actually lays out, establishes when and how we're going to I knew, I guess, which people would do the half mast and the flags work.
Anything further? I'll call the question then. All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. That'll bring us to meeting date for governance and priorities. Right, we had to set this meeting date. This is Mr. Frank.
Yeah, we're looking for your next governance and priority meeting date, so, with your calendars, we're flexible with the understanding, again, every 2 weeks, depending on when council selects that the agenda may be just, put out on the Monday if it's a Thursday meeting type of thing versus a Friday agenda.
Okay. So, I'm sorry, you wanna have a governance and priority meeting every 2 weeks?
No, with council meeting every 2 weeks, you
Right.
have to fit, that, governance and priorities meeting in. So depending on when you schedule it, for example, council meeting here, tomorrow we do the minutes. Friday, we'd have to get a package out for the following week for governance and priority. Or if you do it on the same week as the council meeting, the agenda may just come out Monday versus the Friday when it normally comes out. So it's just trying to coordinate when you have the meeting, when your agenda comes out, that's all.
Okay. Councilor Dean?
So what would preferred dates be for administration?
Well, again, we prefer a Thursday meeting or a Wednesday meeting.
No, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I guess, well, other than a Monday doesn't.
Go ahead, Councilor Wilhelm.
Does that mean, so with council being every second week, when you say a Wednesday or Thursday, you want it the week before that a council meeting occurs, correct?
Again, what the understanding is, we're flexible whenever that meeting date, because, again, with the understanding that after today's meeting, we prepare the minutes, right? And we have to do preparation for the governance and priority during this week when there's a council meeting, if it's the following week, right? So always think from a administration perspective, we're always a week ahead, a week behind preparing the agenda for whenever that meeting is. So again, with the software assist, we have them, we're in the queues preparing them, so it's just a matter of producing the document for council, right? It's, again, whether it's a governance and priority RFD or a council RFD, it's the same amount of work preparing them to put forth before council.
Councilor Dean?
Thanks, Chair. So, coming back to what I remember why we struck this committee, it was to give us an opportunity to discuss a little more robust items that took a little longer, so as we got a good understanding of an agenda that had a maximum of 4 items. So for me, whether it comes immediately before a council meeting or we don't see those items until a council meeting 2 weeks in the future, it really doesn't matter. That what the priority is that we have this time set aside to discuss the items. So I don't think timing with respect to council meetings really matters at all. It's trying to get all of us together. That's the issue.
Okay, I'll ask administration a quick question then. With regard to frequency, we had quite we had a bit of a summer break and then a backlog, and then we had a whole bunch of great ideas that you had to keep up with. So what what do you want for a frequency now that we're heading into a more steady once a month?
Again, the procedural bylaw, I believe it's once a month.
Right. Okay. So we're looking at what was our last one, the 15th, so that'd be the 13th or 20th, something around there.
I'm going the 13th.
On the 13th.
We're planning to do like at 7 o'clock.
Yeah, 20th evening would work for me.
Works for me too.
13th, not for me.
20th evening?
Yeah, I'm away, so but, do we know if it works for David, it works for Devin as well, right? From a shift schedule?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, Councillor Williams works all day. He gets off at 5 o'clock and 4 o'clock, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, sometimes you just can't get everybody together.
Well, I'll accept a motion. It sounds like the 20th of October will work for everybody. Councillor Prestage.
I'll make a motion that council sets the next governance and priorities committee meeting on October 20th, 2022 at 7 p.m.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Councillor Dean?
Will there be an opportunity to attend virtually if necessary?
Yeah,
Certainly can.
that option is
Okay.
always available.
There can be, and that particular option is in the
Procedural.
procedural bylaw.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any further discussion on it? All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. That will bring us to item 8.1, that's an RFP for engineering proposal award for the Horse Creek Road and ANC. Andre, you wanna take us through this one?
Your worship, members of council, at the August 17th council meeting, motion was passed to reallocate $100,000 from unbudgeted revenue to fund engineering work for Horse Creek Road and C roads. An RFP was let out with 3 engineering firms submitting bids. Prices ranged from $128,000 to $257,000. We had some criteria that we rated them by. MPE Engineering came in with the highest rating. They were also the lowest bid submitted. Normally, when we put an engineering proposal forward to council for award, we recommend a 10% contingency. But in this case, given the condition of the ANC road, I'm recommending 15% contingency. I believe there's going to be some issues found on there when they do the geotechnical work. So of the $100,000 from the funds approved by council, we will be using $43,937 plus $6,590 contingency for a total of just over $50,000. The remaining $97,000 will come from the 2023 budget. Recommendation, there are 2 of them, that council awards the Horse Creek Road and ANC Road engineering proposal to MPE Engineering Limited for the submitted bid of $128,757. And the council approves a 15% contingency if required for Horse Creek Road and ANC Road engineering proposal in the amount of $19,314.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on this? Councillor,
Just through to Andre, I do want to just say I appreciate the extra on the contingency or the 15% on set of 10. It's just as nice it it is a heavy haul road, and just having the extra put there instead of having to come back to us. I mean, I believe you're right, probably gonna find more in that bid than we're expecting.
Councillor Wilhelm.
Is it our typical policy, is there a policy in place for that contingency being 10% typically and 15 is different, or is it just kind of on your, what do you figure the contingency?
Through the chair, we don't have a policy on contingencies, but I always put a 10% contingency on any tender or RFP we put out.
Okay.
But in this case, I'm recommending 15.
So I'm gonna ask a quick question. And I'm just a little worried about, I guess, for lack of a better term, we call it bracket creep. So we've got this engineering tender. They've bid it at a certain price. We're anticipating that they're gonna find more, which means they probably didn't bid it right. And if I'm bidding projects and, so I'm just wondering why we're moving off that 10%. If everything goes, explain to me specifically why this is gonna, move outside that 10% so easily. And again, they are the lowest bidder, which is good, but if we end up picking the lowest bidder and 10, 20, 30% overruns, well, they're not the lowest bidder anymore, so we're not really holding the bids stable. I just want to make sure that we don't get run away in the future is all.
So on this particular one, regardless who we would be awarding to, I'd be recommending the 15%. Horse Creek Road, we did all the geotechnical work on there in 2020. So we have all that information. On the A and C road, we don't have any geotechnical work. So given the shape of that first 200 meters, which has deteriorated a lot in the last 2 years, my anticipation is when they do the geotech work, they'll find that the base is failing. Well, looking at the road, I believe the base is failing, and I think they'll confirm that. It'll take a bit more engineering work. That's why the additional 5% for the contingency.
Go ahead, Councilor Prestige.
I'll make a motion that council awards the Horse Creek Road and A&C Road engineering proposal to MPE Engineering for the submitted bid of $128,757.
Thank you, Councilor Prestige. So motion on the floor. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. And part two, Councilor Cush.
Make a motion that council approves the 15% contingency if required for Horse Creek Road and ANC Road engineering proposal in the amount of $19,314.
Thank you, Councilor Cush. Any discussion on that one? All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. We're setting a blistering pace here, people. Waiting for this to load here. All right, letter tender of award.
Your worship, members of council, administration let out a tender for the replacement of 2 bridge culverts on the old Blue Ridge Highway within the first 650 meters. It was let out, advertised. We had 5 bidders, prices from $446,000 to $823,000. MPE reviewed the submissions and recommended that award be to Barcy Enterprise Limited for the tendered price of $446,223.75. The funding will be $400,000 from the 2022 bridge maintenance budget, with the remainder of the funds coming from the 2022 capital budget identified for the Old Blue Ridge Highway reconstruction, which is $800,000. Recommendation is that council award BF 72373 and BF 85319 replacement tender to Barcy Enterprise Limited for the value of $446,223.75 $223.75, and that council approves a 10% contingency if required for BF 72373 and BF 85319 replacement project in the amount of $44,622. I should also point out that one of those bridge culverts was to be replaced in 2021. The other one's to be replaced in 4 years.
Mr. Wilhelm?
And the 800,000, or sorry, through the chair to Andre, the 800,000 you said identified for Old Blue Ridge Highway reconstruction, that was from a previous RFD that we ended up not
Correct.
approving because the bids came in too high?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions to it? Okay, what does council want to do? Councilor Prestige?
I'll make a motion that council award BF 72373 and BF 85319 replacement tender to Barcy Enterprises Limited for the value of $446,223.75.
Okay, motion on the floor from Councilor Prestige. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Part two, do we need the Councilor Dean?
Move that council approves a 10% contingency if required for BFD 72373 and BF 85319 replacement project in the amount of $44,622.
Thank you. Any discussion on that? All,
Yeah, I noticed in the previous motion, previous recommendation, it's BF 72373, and then motion two, it's BFD 72373, is that correct?
Through the chair, that's just a typo.
Okay.
The D should not be there.
Okay, so I'll just amend that motion.
to BF?
Yeah.
Okay. Councilor Prestige?
I just, through the chair to Andre, when is this scheduled to be done?
Through Chair, Council Prestige this year. Our engineers have the contracts done up and will be contacting Barcy to start moving. The completion deadline is, I think, October 30th.
Okay, I just have one concern, is West Fraser is using that road for their log haul. And we thought that the 658 would be done, but it could interfere with their log haul once they start ripping the highway up, so just a concern.
Through the chair, if council awards a tender, we will contact West Fraser today to let them know we are doing that work and that there will be a full road closure. And the anticipation was that 658 would have been done by now, but the timing doesn't work for them.
Yeah. No, it's just to notify West Fraser and say, hey, this is happening.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any further comments to the motion, speaking to the motion? I don't see any. I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. That'll bring us to semi-annual review of the strategic business plan. As soon as this opens. Mr. Frank.
Your worship, members of council, you have a hard copy so that it's a little easier for you to read there. Everything that is highlighted in yellow is current. Anything that isn't highlighted is at a future date. From an administration perspective, due to the Director of Corporate Services leaving her position, we're a little bit behind on the financial understanding, and in consultation with the consultant, Mr. World, is we're leaving it with the other individual to assist in prepping and doing that work for council, so. With that, I believe, for the most part, or I know for the fact that, we are on track, and if there are any questions, the administration is prepared to answer.
Councillor Wilhelm.
So understanding that, well, obviously extenuating circumstances on items not being able to meet timeframes. So are you going to suggest new timeframes for these items that were not able to be reached?
Your worship, through to Councillor Wilhelm, yes, when the new person starts and we have an opportunity to sit down with that individual.
Okay.
Okay. I'd like to say thanks to the men, this is actually, we're changing the way we do things around here a little bit, well, substantially. And the fact that we're getting a report on where we are in the business plan, I think is fantastic. It gives us an idea of, you know, council set certain goals, we work through that, through the strategic plan, then the business plan, and business or tactical plan, and gives us a good idea of where we're at and how successful we are implementing some of the things that council wants. So really appreciate the report. Councillor Dean?
Thank you. Just with respect to creating a web-friendly document for public knowledge, the PDF, that's what that's referring to, the PDF that's within this RFD?
Your worship, to Councillor Dean, are you talking the number 2, item 2?
I'm looking
Where is
at
it?
1.2B, create a.
Yeah. I think it was a combination, if I remember the conversation, it was a combination of our financial reports that we would provide to council, as well as some other financial monthly updates that we occasionally, or quarterly updates that we occasionally would provide council, so. Yeah.
Sure, thanks.
Councillor Wilhelm?
Right.
Just another question for follow-up on items that have come due. I'm not on the ECDev committee, so I'm assuming item 4.1A is something that's been reviewed at the ECDev committee. Review of economic strategy plan.
Councillor Prestridge?
Yes, we reviewed that at our last meeting.
And then, I guess the only other one that's showing due now would be item 5.2C, update bylaw, policy procedure, log registry to support ongoing maintenance. Is that something that?
It's happening, yeah, we're reviewing legislative services registries, both from a policy perspective and a bylaw perspective, creating some standards that administration and council can both follow.
Thank you. I believe that's it. Any other questions for the men on this? Councillor Dean?
Just prepared to make a motion that council accept the semi-annual review strategic business plan as information.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dean. Any comments to the motion? All in favor? And that is carried. So that will bring us to correspondence and information items. Anyone see anything they wish to highlight? Councillor Wilhelm?
I'll just make a motion that council accepts correspondence and information items as circulated.
Okay, thank you very much. And any discussion on the motion? All in favor? That is carried. That will bring us to the monthly service tracker, skipping ahead. Reports, council reports in question. We'll start with Councillor Prestidge.
We had an MPC meeting, and then a special MPC meeting. We approved a business in, can't remember which subdivision that's in. That's out by the airport. And then we had a community league meeting last night. Blue Ridge Community League owns a lot and a garage which they let the Blue Ridge Boxing League use. But our hall needs a lot of work. It's in the basement. They don't have to do it, so we voted for selling a lot and the garage that sits to one of the residents there, and they're gonna move the boxing league into the basement of the hall. We kind of thought it was better to, I'll say this again, it's a shame that we have to move the boxing league out of that, because it works good for them. But the hall is in dire straits, it needs a lot of work. So we figured that it's better to have a hall, because without a hall, we don't have a community league. So we're gonna sell the boxing club building to save the hall. So it's, and that's about it.
Okay. Any questions to Councillor Prestige? Okay, Councillor Cush.
Again, had a couple MPC meetings there that Councillor Prestige was talking about. Had in Salmo ag meeting. Again, older building. I mean, they've done lots of maintenance and stuff in there. Got a few tenders back, looking at updating the kitchens and stuff. Make it a lot more, I guess, newer. Some of the stuff there is very dated and a lot friendlier for the caterers and stuff that come through. Looking at doing a couple extra fundraisers throughout the fall and into the spring here to help offset a bunch of those costs. I had a big, called the Red Eye Ball Tournament over the weekend. I just want to again thank administration for providing the Woodlands County tents. They were well used out there. It helped with kind of getting some people out of some of the weather that we had the one night, and most everything in there plus the giveaways. I had a Whitecourt library board meeting last night. That one just kind of go over some of the I guess stuff we're finding in some of the policies, and again that's kind of what we do, the policies and stuff, and they're getting their budgets ready again to get prepared for next year, and that's where we're at.
Okay, Councillor Dean.
So I had along with the rest of council, had our governance and priorities meeting on September 15th, and some of those items obviously came to this meeting. Just want to say for the public, those meetings are really bear fruit, because it, that particular week we had a very, very long council meeting, and if we would have been expected as a council then to really fully digest the items that were on the GMP, it would have been pretty difficult. So I'm grateful that council initiated that, built that policy, or pardon me, that committee. And then I've got a couple items. I see we have a service tracker monthly report, but maybe I'll just touch on them because they do relate to roads. Had a number of calls from residents about roads just in the past couple weeks. One Range Road 121 is ongoing concern with washboard. And so what the resident asked me, and I didn't have an answer for, is what type of schedule is in effect for grader beats, given that you can't necessarily schedule a grader on a day of the week because weather would push that day around. But I'd just like administration to give us an understanding of how the decision to grade a road is made and frequency, etc., bearing in mind the service level. So we could have that conversation in the service tracker, but if we want to ask the question now, I can pose the question to admin now. Which would you prefer?
I'll have some questions in the service tracker report as well, so whichever way you want to go, you can ask them.
Okay, well, I'll defer because this really maybe isn't the time. And the other one, again, is road related. This time, the concern is residents that live on subdivision that have heard through the grapevine that subdivision roads are going to be rehabilitated back to gravel. And so what my concern is that there's a bit of a communication issue. You know, some residents seem to know what's going on, other residents don't. So again, I think in the service tracker portion, we can discuss that.
Okay. Does that complete your report?
It does, yes, sorry.
Okay, any questions to Councillor Dean? Okay, Councillor Wilhelm.
We had one meeting in between, besides our governance priorities, which we've gone over multiple times. One meeting with Community Futures, and as always, excellent group. I kind of had to cut that one short because we did have a governance priorities meeting, but I got to meet two, you would call them customers that utilize CFYE that presented at the meeting. And yeah, success stories for that group, so it was fantastic. And I believe that Community Futures has already reached out to our economic development group about some potential work together with them. So excited to see where that will go. And then on the 16th, myself and our MLA Martin Long went for a lunch at the Whitecourt Senior Center, Spruce View Lodge. I got to sit with two wonderful ladies. I'm not going to say their name in public, but I went to that lunch not knowing what to expect, and ended up sitting there and talking to them for 90 minutes, where eventually the administrator came over and said, lunch is over. The ladies need to get on for the rest of their day. And I'm like, it's been 90 minutes already? So it was a really fantastic conversation. Got to hear about their lives a little bit. They've been around Whitecourt forever. They had lots to talk about, and I guess that lunch went really well and went very fast for it being 90 minutes. And yeah, other than that, I guess it very similar to what Councillor Dean was saying. I haven't had a whole lot of conversations lately with the residents, but what ones I have had is around roads and the worry about the hardtop roads being potentially taken back to gravel. I've discussed with them from my conversations with administration how those decisions will be made in the future, and why that happens, and potentially why this is better for them in the long run. But like anything, I think more communication with them just makes those future conversations easier, so they understand why those decisions are being made. And other than that, that's it.
Okay. Any questions to Councillor Wilhelm? All right. I'll move on to my report. So I have had, do you guys want to know what goes on with the RMA stuff, or do you?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. So the reason I don't necessarily bring it all up is because it's, I want to keep it relevant to us, but there certainly there's an ongoing caribou recovery strategy in the Chinchaga that, and I think everybody knows the issues around woodland caribou and how it's going to affect the possible access to the area in both oil and gas industry, recreation, hunting, fishing, trapping, everything. The task force is actually meeting 3 days. I think there's 12 full day meetings on this, and there's an entire week coming up in 2 weeks in Manning, including a tour of a disturbed area. So they're definitely, the GOA is definitely putting a lot of effort into this on the consult side. So hopefully we'll wind up with something that's workable for industry. But the other thing, and did I bring up the Cardston Library review in the last report? So there was a library review, a judicial review of a ministerial order occurring in Cardston, and it bears some resemblance to what we had going on here. The ICF legislation is new legislation. It's being interpreted differently depending on which municipality you're in, so there is some back and forth, and I think it's important that people understand that we're not the only communities having disagreements on how to interpret the legislation. So this particular review was the government of Alberta telling a municipality, no, that's the way that this legislation is supposed to be interpreted, and the municipality said, no, we think it actually says something else. So they're not against the other municipality, they're actually fighting the GOA on this, which is an interesting way to go about it. So anyway, there's a challenge to the ministerial order, so I'll be looking very, very carefully. There will be a written decision coming out on that and the case concluded, but that's one good thing about this online thing that's happened, is you actually get to go and attend some of these things without physically having to go into the courtrooms. So you can kind of spread yourself out a little bit more. I also got a call from another municipality, and they're wondering, because of the way RMA is structured and that they're member driven on resolutions, and it's interesting because during the report I heard 2 facilities are having trouble finding funding, so maybe this is an apt time, but they were talking about putting a resolution together to get some kind of funding structure for some of the municipally funded buildings that exist in rural communities to service not-for-profits. So you're talking about hockey arenas, ag centers, this kind of thing. And they were initially talking about covering a portion of the operating costs, like power or gas or something along those lines, to make them a little more feasible. And the reality is that the province built a lot of these buildings, then they backed away from them, and the municipalities took them over, so now we're left with aging facilities that we have to maintain and repair, and the community depends on them. So, much like you're moving things around in Blue Ridge there. So I want council's thoughts on something like that. I said I'd present it to council because we do have a Zone 3 meeting coming up, and we could put something up there. It would still be an emergent, but at least we could present it at the zone if this is something that our municipality, the Woodlands, would like to back. So that's it. Are there any questions for me? Councilor Dean?
Thank you. With respect to industry on that Caribou panel, how many members sit on the panel? So you're a member of the panel?
Yeah.
Through the RMA?
Yes.
Okay. How many panel members are there, and what's the industry representation?
We got 2 from forestry, 2 from oil and gas, and part of the problem is some of them haven't been there through the whole thing. Some of them are online, so it's difficult to figure out exactly where everybody's sitting. And some of them are, so for example, myself, I introduce myself as Reed of Woodlands County and a director for RMA, but I'm there on behalf of RMA. Then I have another rural Reed that's there, but she's there on behalf of another group. So it's hard to keep track of what hat they're wearing when they're sitting at the table, even though they're from somewhere else. So, and they've got Trappers Association, they've got rural municipalities, they have AUMA there, they have forestry, they have oil and gas, CAP is there. So they've got quite and then the environmental groups are there as well.
Okay. Sounds pretty similar to the group that did the presentation. Oh, when was that? Probably 2012-ish. And there's interest groups represented as well, lobbyists, etc.
Yeah, it's an interesting process because when you go through it, you have to develop. They kind of break you into a group. Then you'll have a few ideas that are around this particular structure, and then you keep breaking out of that and narrowing things down until you finally get to actual recommendations. Is this a recommendation? Is this a consideration? Or is this the rationale for the recommendation? And you're very carefully putting these things all together. So it's interesting the way the picture starts to form, and everybody has kind of positional things that they want to see out of this or not see out of it when they come in the room. But you kind of learn this process, and once you figure out where they're going, it's a little frustrating at times because you certainly can't jump to the end of the process. It takes a couple of days to get there. But they have a very good facilitator, so I'm very hopeful that this will yield a plan and the big concern is that this is a federal mandate handed down to the province and saying if you don't do something about it, then we'll be forced to. So they're trying to make sure that the federal mandate is met by whatever plan they put in to keep the federal plan from coming in, because the federal plan would result in a moratorium. Or may result in a moratorium. There's a higher chance that it would, which would be devastating to industries and small communities and that kind of thing, so. Councillor Cush?
I just want to speak on the, I guess, the recommended action from, or for RMA there for the Zone 3. For a lot of people that don't probably realize the small community, like the rural halls and stuff out there, they do what they can, obviously through fundraising and events and stuff to try to keep the lights on, but costs going up and everything, and that they typically house a lot of your 4-H programs, your FCS programs, your rural groups, your like a lot of like the mums and tots and all the smaller programs that are more accessible for people further out to get to instead of having to come into big centers. Like these halls, whether it's the one in Soundwell, Blue Ridge, or up in the Fort, or I think even Goose Lake, the area, they have a hall too. Like those halls are very key for the residents and the people in that area, the services and I guess the events and stuff they can provide for the people. So yeah, it's something, a resolution like that I would definitely be in support from. I know that, I mean, we're not the only county that has these small halls out there, and it's sad we start going through some areas and some communities and you see their halls are shut down, and it's further that people have to go to be able to do these things just because the funding's not there for them.
Okay. Councillor Dean?
Coming back to that resolution, did they give you the resolution that they want the zone? So
The meeting occurred, so I got this phone call, last night. They had just had a meeting and there was kind of and again, this is a structural type of conversation, so they won't have another zone meeting in time to have that put forward at their zone, but we will. So they were kind of looking for a community that might be able to float it at their zone meeting and get some support at the zone as an emergent resolution. So again, it's yeah, and I've kind of wrestled with the government support on some of these things, and I think there is a bit of a disparity between kind of the urban and rural access to granting, and we're going to see we've seen pretty significant cuts in MSI, municipal sustainability, for rural municipalities and well, for municipalities in general. And we're seeing continued downloading onto municipalities in general. And rural municipalities are having a really hard time getting another revenue stream to provide the critical services that they do, like infrastructure, let alone any of the social services like rec centers and buildings and things like that. So there's an opportunity there somehow or another. I'm just, for me, it's a bit of I refer to it as it's on the snow globe phase at this moment. I can't see the picture just yet. I don't know what that resolution would look like, but that's why I'm bringing it to council.
right, and that's my question. Is this something that you're asking council if we would support at our upcoming meeting on the 3rd? I think putting up.
I don't know if we'd be able to throw a resolution together that rapidly, and we'd have to put it out to council and get a council approval to bring it forward. That's part of the problem. It could be brought as an emergent resolution at RMA.
Yeah.
But I bring it up because I wanted people to think about it ahead of time, so.
And coming back, I appreciate you bringing it up. but if we are seriously considering bringing it through our zone and getting it vetted there, then we need to do something, I guess. Come
Right.
up with it.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Councilor Fish.
Unfortunately, like, it would be nice to bring to our zone. I agree, you know, if we can maybe get behind this one, but as far as an urgent, we have one more day, then, county office is shut down Friday, then it's the weekend, and then having the zone 3 is Monday morning. So I don't think we have the time to properly go over this and prepare something currently.
Yeah, it's not something we just have in our back pocket, Councilor Prestige.
At the Zone 3, we could probably bring it up and mention it, that this is coming up at the RMA, just so our zone knows it's coming. It'd be good to mention it.
Okay. So administration, you dodged a bullet there. You're trying not to make eye contact, right? Don't say yes. Don't say yes. That's it for my report then, and completion of questions, yes? Nothing further? With that, I'll accept the motion to accept the reports as information. Councilor Wilk.
I'll motion that council accepts the council reports and questions as information.
Thank you, Councilor. Any discussion? All in favor? And that is carried. That will bring us to our monthly service tracker, and Mr. Frank.
Your worship, members of council, this is your monthly service tracker. One of the things that we are trying to break down is the number of councillors' requests that they put on behalf of their ratepayers. And depending on the information that you provide, we're having a more of a difficult time to distinguish whether or not council has submitted on behalf of the ratepayer or the ratepayer has submitted it or you've submitted it because you know that the ratepayer has a concern, right? So that's one of the things, if we can get councillor to provide that detail when they do submit on behalf of the ratepayer, so that even you're saying that you're submitting on behalf of the ratepayer would then clarify that for us that much more, and we can track it that way.
Okay. Councilor Wilhelm.
Through the chair to admin, just a question with regards to how you guys use this on your end, and it doesn't necessarily require more information to us for it, but in our strategic planning, we talk about making sure that we're doing things very analytically, and when one road is getting more requests than other, are you guys planning around that? Like, okay, we need to start increasing the service on that. We need to increase the amount of greater routes that happen on that road to keep those or to mitigate causing more requests in the future. Are you guys utilizing the information in that manner, or is this just a massive information and you guys are getting it and then not necessarily using that for decision making?
Yeah, your worship, through to Councillor Wilhelm, and the information is twofold. One is to get us the information so that we're aware of the concerns, i.e. The easiest one, if a stop sign's down, that we aren't aware of it because it happened 20 minutes after the road foreman went by there and he's not going to travel that road for another 2 days, for example. That is an example. And then the second part is to answer your question. Yes, we gather the information to understand and start to use that data to begin to focus our service levels on where our priorities shift, or not, I shouldn't say shift, that may require additional attention. And we know that Range Road 120 is one of our busier roads, right? And we're tracking that, and based on the number of complaints, are we doing a good job of the service level there? And is 10 complaints every 3 months an acceptable level? We haven't determined what's an acceptable level of, and when I say complaints, I should say service requests, right? Because some of them are legit service requests that say, can you look at this for the future, right?
Councilor Prestige?
Yes, the service tracker is a great report, but something that I would like to see on it is, like Blue Ridge has 10 requests. It would be nice to know what roads that people are having problems with. Like, we see there's 4 for grading and washboarding, but is there any way we can break that down so we can see where our problems are?
Yeah, just, yeah. Your worship, through to Councillor Prestige, yes, we can provide that. It's just, again, what detail level do you want that? And just putting the report together and extracting the information out.
Okay, and, yeah, and I think we've had discussion around the level of detail on the service tracker, because when you look at the requests that are closed versus requests that are open, you're not sure which ones are open, which ones are closed, what they were, and the actions too. If you have a pothole request, for example, and you send a guy out with a pickup and he shovels a load of dirt into the pothole, and we say it's fixed, and the resident's like, well, it's back tomorrow. Are we getting any level of detail on that? So I'll go over to Councillor Dean.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. So just coming back to the question that I brought up during our reports, one of the concerns that numerous residents have brought brought my way is, you know, this concept of a schedule, like grader beats, you know, is it once a week, is it once every 2 weeks, is it twice a week? And I don't know about the rest of you, but I don't have a good handle on when graders are out in my area. And so I ask administration, is that beat schedule, if you will, can that be sent to us in an overview, just so that we have an idea? So yeah, I pose that question.
Through the chair to Councillor Dean, short answer, no. Problems are, excuse me, this year, specifically I'll go back. We typically try to hit every road once every 2 weeks. There are some roads, field access road, that we may not go over more than once every 2 months. There are some roads we hit once a week. For instance, the old Blue Ridge Highway, we try to get it at least once or twice a week. But then we have issues where if one of our grader operator goes on vacation, we try to hire a contract grader. This summer we've had issues hiring contract graders. We also have the issue this year, specifically the last 6 weeks, we haven't had any rain. So the roads are drying out. Basically, it's like moving marbles around on the road. We grade the road. The next day, it's washboarded because there's no moisture to hold everything together to get it compact. So, and going from 7 graders down to 5 grader beats has further made it difficult to have a concrete schedule. We do react to some service requests. When we get service requests, we do go out and look. Somebody goes and looks at them. Range Road, the one you mentioned, Range Road 121, we do know our number one caller lives at the end. Calls once a week, twice a week, sometimes twice a day. And I know that person expects a grader there once a week, but we cannot give that service especially given the conditions we're under right now with the dry conditions, that the roads are just not holding together until we get more moisture.
I'll go with Councillor Dean and then Councillor Wilson.
Okay, thank you. So just a follow-up to that. I recall last November, it was the first snowfall, and of course, that first snowfall solicits questions from residents. And at the time, I asked if something could be produced, just basically a resident expectation, a post on the website, maybe shared on, or put on Facebook so it could be shared around, just to share that message. Because I think if people hear that, they understand that. What my concern is, I asked the question, does people have a good understanding of what the schedule is for grader beats in their area, and everybody shook their head. So we don't really know this. It's hard to have a conversation with the resident, and we don't want to keep tasking administration with a phone call from us or answering an email. So again, I asked that if we could have like a PSA basically produced, so the residents know what to expect for snowfall. Could we ask the same thing to be produced here so that we can share it around?
Mr. Fang?
Your worship, absolutely, we can put a fact sheet together, again, with the understanding that there's a number of variable conditions that will determine that service based on conditions at the time, right? So, and that's the difficulty with any when it's weather related, right? So.
Councillor Wilhelm?
I don't know if there's a regularly scheduled thing that happens, but I do know in the past, I've heard the councillors doing road tours where they go around and look at specific roads all together. And I wonder if that is something we should look at scheduling, maybe not necessarily in the near future if it doesn't work, but coming up, because I think what'll be really important coming out of that is an education for myself and understanding. We look at a road, like a lot of it's case by case, and I do talk to administration about it a lot of time, but if we're sitting there looking at a road being like, and majority of council's like, what's going on here, how do we fix this? Then at least administration can educate us on what the ongoing issues with that road are, how you're trying to mitigate it, and then we can continue to share that with our residents as well, and maybe stop some phone calls in the future, or at least be able to educate them when they call us, because I've never built a road, I don't know how to maintain a road, and I know each road is quite unique in our county, so getting more of that information could only be helpful for everybody, I think.
Your worship, and again, with COVID, so this council hasn't been on the road too? Oh,
No.
okay.
Okay, Councillor Prestidge, then Councillor Bush.
Through the chair to Andre. Two questions. The speed signs in Blue Ridge, any update on that? And the second one is the crosswalk lights in Blue Ridge. We're supposed to take over them from the province. Has that happened yet, or because they're not working?
Through the chair to Council Prestige, we did have a conversation with Alberta Transportation representatives. They were going to transfer the crosswalk over to us, but they were going to repair it, get it working, transfer it. Then they changed their mind, they were going to keep it, and they were still supposed to fix it. We have made calls to them about it still not working. It's in their hands. The radar signs, we have them. We're taking some training, and we're just waiting to get them installed now.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Kush, then Councillor Dean.
The first one kind of a thumbs up, I guess. We had the graveling program, running a bunch of the roads out in Salmo here over the last little while. Did receive a lot of feedback from residents that were really impressed with the quality of what the roads and stuff were after. So thank you, the guys are there doing a great job. Other thing, I know we had a comment back in the spring there, we were talking with the frost and stuff coming out around like the Bull Creek crossing and a few of the others up like 751 and stuff. That Whitecourt was supposed to be kind of working on, or you were conversating. Do you know if any of those are gonna be adjusted before spring or fall, winter? Or are we just waiting for it to like ice over and smooth out that way? So some of those ruts are pretty rough.
Through the church council, I haven't had any discussions with Whitecourt having to do with the secondaries, so I can't answer that.
Okay.
Councillor Dean.
Thanks again, and I apologize for being the bearer of bad news, but I guess that's the nature of the beast when it comes to roads. When the roads are smooth and everybody likes them, we don't get a whole bunch of calls saying so. But coming back to the subdivision rehab program, that is, everybody understands it's budget driven and everybody understands why that decision was made. What I alluded to earlier in the meeting was that some residents know this is coming and some residents don't. We have received an email earlier this week about dates for the road use open house, road use policy open house. I would propose that during those open houses, we have some information that talks about what the plan is going forward for subdivision rehab. I don't think we need to try and solve it right now, but are those dates, what the email said was council may want to discuss the dates. Are those ones written in stone? The 11th, 12th, 13th, or?
Your worship through to Councillor Dean, that's on my list to confirm when council wants to have
Okay.
those.
Here, because your CAO report's coming up yet, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's great.
Okay, so that's what I'd ask, is that we let those people that come to those open houses know what the plan is for subdivision rehab.
All right. I'm gonna ask one question myself, so kind of coming back to and again, I think the most critical thing that we I look at the municipal government as a service provider, and the residents as a customer. I think that's the right mindset to come about it. Not that they're necessarily have a lot of options, they're kind of stuck with us, but I like to treat them like they're customers still. I think that's the best way to come at it. And one of the things that we talked about with asset management, and I know it takes time to implement it, but we talked about a road plan that's coming up that would say, you know, this road, and part of the problem with determining what road is bad is it depends on who you ask and who you send out there. So if you know, sometimes you'll send someone out, how's that road look? That looks fine. Well, are we evaluating the road based on the drainage, the surface, the traffic type, all the rest of it? So as far as I knew, we were doing that, or we were going to start doing that. And then do we have, and when will it be complete? Because it was my understanding that we would have this, a 5-10-year road plan that we can actually put up on the public site that says these are our terrible roads and they're getting resurfaced on this, and here's our long-term plan for them. And I know there's budgetary implications for all of this, but do we have anything like that in the works, or are we moving towards it, or have we got to have that discussion at budget and actually step on the gas?
We are working towards it. We have done an assessment of our gravel roads. The asphalt roads, we do have a schedule for those. So We're currently assessing all our culverts. The ditching is partially done. I think we are, I'm gonna say 60% done of our culverts. We've identified, I'm gonna say around 5,000 culverts to date. So the pieces are, we're starting to get the information. We are probably, I'm gonna say, at least a year and a half before it's all together, and it starts working. But yes, we do make assessments of what we're gonna do based on a number of criteria. Like you mentioned, we look at the drainage, we look at the culverts, we look at the road, when we know or have an idea we have bad roads, we specifically look at them in the spring. When frost's coming up, we get a good idea what's going on then. So, yes, we do make an assessment based on a number of criteria when we're proposing to do work. It's not just one person that looks at it. The area supervisors and the manager put forward what they feel needs to be done, and then I also go look at all the criteria on that road, so it's coming from 4 different individuals as to what makes our plan. The 5-10-year plan, we're probably, I think we've identified in here 2023 before we have it ready, but we will be putting together as part of the 2023 budget a loose 3-year capital plan for roads, culverts, bridges.
And again, I know it's been tough because we've been in an economic recovery. There's been COVID, there's been, we've had all kinds of staffing changes. We've had different CAOs, directors of interest. There's been a lot of turnover. There's a lot going on in the municipality. But I think for the most part that if people are communicated, if we up the communication with people and say, yes, we know we have a problem in these areas, we will be addressing it. This is the time frame. It's based on finances. We can't do everything that we want to do right away. But we have to start getting that message out there. And I know there's a certain amount of data collection that has to happen prior to you have to know where you are. Then you need to communicate with your residents as to where they want to be. Then you have to communicate with your residents as to how much that's going to cost. Then they usually adjust where you want to be. And then you're having a frank conversation about your service levels. And I think this whole council wants to really get to that part, and I think administration wants to get to that part. I'm just looking for a time frame as to A, when we're going to be there, and B, can we do some of that communication in the interim with the consideration that at least people know that's what we're working towards. Is that, and I don't want to speak for council if I'm offside with that, so. Mr. Frank?
Yeah, your worship, members of council, and again, as part of the strategic plan, that has been identified as part of council's priority, and it is 2023 is when we bring in the capital plan, along with the other capital plans that we are working towards that. So, and that is on our website. Can we shift focus, I shouldn't say shift focus, can we emphasize some of the where we're at in the strategic plan? Absolutely. However, unfortunately, and again, it's time commitment, and this week is the capital plan, next week it's the snow plowing policy. So again, what I'm trying to say is we try to do our best to get that communications out. We're working under reduced levels of service, and you can't take 15% of your workforce away 2 years ago and still be able to manage some of the things we're doing. So again, it sounds like an excuse, and I'm not trying to indicate that. I'm just saying it just takes time, and sometimes we just have to be patient, and I hope council respects that.
Okay. Anything further on the service tractor report? Councilor Cush.
Make a motion, the council accepts the monthly service track report as information.
Thank you, Councilor Cush. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. That will bring us to our, what are we at, almost 11. Well, let's do the CAO report, and then we'll do committee of the whole and take a break. But, go ahead.
Okay, your worship, starting with the open houses, there was an email sent out for proposed October 11th, 12th, and 13th. In the three communities of Blue Ridge, Whitecourt area, and Fort, we're proposing from 7 till 8:30. We have two thought processes on the format. Is that it's just a get together, counselors that are there, staff that are there, just take the concerns or questions and answer them. And then the other thought is from 7 to 7:30, let people come in, do the thing, and then have a sit down from 7:30 to 8 to ask the audience to ask the direct questions. And then from 8 to 8:30, again, mingle or ask specifics, or depending on how long the questions are and stuff like that. So from council's perspective, does the 11th, 12th, and 13th work from 7 p.m. to 8:30, and again, in the various communities?
Would the one for Whitecourt be here?
I think we have that scheduled Thursday tentatively, wasn't it?
It was the 12th,
It was the Wednesday then,
yes.
Sorry, what were the dates again?
the 11th, 12th, and 13th.
Of October?
I can probably make the 11th and 12th work, not the 13th though.
Yeah, and I'm not expecting that all of council be at all of them, but hopefully the ones that they represent, I would assume.
Councilor Dean?
So coming back to that question about venue, so the one slated for Whitecourt, is that here or is it
I think
westward?
it's scheduled, are we looking at the Westward Hall? Yeah, I thought that's what we were thinking.
Okay, and then further to the concept, I know you guys are still working on something that you'll roll out to us. I'd like to make a motion that information detailing subdivision road rehabilitation be included in
Oh,
the
yeah,
presentation.
and I'm sorry, your worship, I don't know if a motion is necessary. We can have that information there. It's a quick fact sheet on, it's basically a 1 or 2 liner that indicates that when your road is deteriorated to the point beyond repair, that we would pulverize it. Is that the word? That's the word. Pulverize it and then apply and put it back to ground. So it all depends on the subdivision.
And if I could, I think I'm gonna jump ahead on what Councilor Dean is asking for, is we only do this in the summertime, we don't pulverize through the winter. So I think what council's asking for is they wanna know any subdivisions that have been identified for that treatment and have them on a list so that people know that their subdivision is on the list to be pulverized. So do we have a list like that? Do you know what's getting pulverized? I mean, you must know.
We do. We reevaluate it each spring. Yes, we have an idea of what may be on the books for next year.
And we can provide that information.
Yeah. And I think that's important because people will have time to either prepare for that or they'll have time to give us other thoughts on the idea, so. Because again, I think we moved to this idea that a basic standard level of service is a gravel road, and then you're looking at cold mix and then finally pavement. But the trouble that we ran into in paying for this was there was no mechanism to recover funds to deal with that level of service. So council needs to figure out how we're going to pay for that going forward, and how much of that is gonna be cost recovery from either an improvement tax, or will there be an improvement tax, or, what do residents want? So we need to have that discussion yet. Councilor Wilhelm.
Through the chair to administration, I think that we could potentially head off a lot of issues or questions from residents if we're gonna have the discussion with them or have a public forum about it. If you guys are coming with a list of potential roads and subdivisions where this is gonna happen, I don't think you can provide an anomalous comment like it's gonna be more expensive to maintain it than it is to tear it back down to gravel. If I was a resident, I would be asking what those numbers are. What is this costing to repair? And what is the county saving on turning this back to gravel? And then, because that would be a question I would first off have as residents. When you're saying it's too expensive to maintain, what's that threshold? And then second, for those residents who have purchased properties and their property value is very dependent on having a hardtop road to their property and the significant impact that can have on their property values, is what are the potential solutions for keeping that road in that condition or rebuilding the road back in that condition? Because yes, we're starting to limit some of our service requests on specific roads that have now been taken back to gravel, but it's only because the road's in better shape and it's better, but these people are still having significant impacts on their property values now because they no longer have hardtop road to their property, and also a quality of life change as well. So if we're gonna start that discussion, I think that some investment into how we're going to, why we're gonna make that decision with hard numbers and facts, and not just because it's becoming too expensive to maintain, and then also what potential solutions there could be, or how can we maintain, because there's gonna be residents that are gonna say, I don't care how much it costs for you to maintain this road, don't destroy this road, we'll pay more money to keep our road as cold mix. For sure, there's gonna be many residents in my division that are gonna say that.
Well, and I think that's a conversation that council's actually anxious to start with residents, is to have that conversation, and maybe it's an opportunity we can have, but Mr. Frank?
Yeah, your worship, members of council, unfortunately, this council hasn't had that discussion, but the previous council did have the discussion, and the determination of the information was presented to council 2019, I think.
20, I believe.
Might have been 20, yeah, in 2020, when then so the decision is already made. Now, again, having said that, if council wants to have that discussion at budget time where the impact of financial impact occurs, then by all means, we should have that discussion, right? And we are from financial recovery, because we do have meetings scheduled for the 26th and 27th of October, one being after the council meeting, to have some discussions of where council wants to be. I'd like to move one of those discussions up to the October 20, I gotta go back to 14th, October 13th meeting? 12th, October 12th meeting. to see where, from a financial perspective, where we can reallocate some money within the existing budget that could look at service levels differences, so.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, again, it's not it's just for us to go back and start to prepare the budget, so on the 26th and 27th, we can have that further discussion.
But I do think that during these public open houses on the road bylaws and winter maintenance and thing, I think it would be a good opportunity to have a discussion with residents around the realization that roads cost money. Roads cost money. What would you like and how do we pay for it? And make the residents part of the solution in this discussion. Because I think a lot of the conversations that I've had, residents would be in favor of a local improvement tax if they had a better road. And this dovetails into where we are with asset management and, you know, the information piece and all the rest of it. That's the frustrating part of this, is that this is where council wants to move. We don't have the puzzle pieces put together for another year and a half in the data end of things. So and I think we need to communicate this, you know, that these things are in the works. But it's not something that turns around on a dime. So.
Or you have to throw a lot of resources at it.
Well, yeah.
That's the other,
Yeah.
and we're not at that
Council Dean, then Council President.
position.
So coming back, I know I said that I was prepared to make a motion, and our CEO said that we didn't really need a motion. There's been a few different areas that we've covered. You know, Councillor Wilhelm brought up the idea of having at least a ballpark objective set of data that customers could talk about. Our Revis is speaking to the fact that asset management is going to help us manage these things. Also speaking to the fact that conversations with residents could lead to a local improvement tax. So there's a few different things. I just want to make sure that all this is captured.
Yeah, your worship members, again, the purpose of the open house is to talk about the winter maintenance, the whole bit. I guarantee you'll get other questions from other ratepayers about other things, right? Whether it's development, whether it's community services, it varies, right? And I think, again, with the understanding that the issue of under the next year's program for decommissioning some of the roads, not decommissioning some of the roads, pulverizing some of the roads, that information probably could be put together relatively quickly. But again, this council, not the previous council, hasn't changed the position from administration to do that. So can we put out that information? Yeah, absolutely.
Councillor President?
Through the chair to administration, we have it booked for the 11th in Bruges. We might want to contact the community league because they've been having their meetings on the second Tuesday of the month.
And that's the second Tuesday, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we were just suggested though, so if we moved the fort and Blue Ridge around that,
I don't think I'll make the 13th.
no, you won't make that. Okay.
And I can't make the 13th.
I think if you talk to the community league, they could do it on Monday or something.
Oh, okay.
I just don't want
That's
to see a conflict
Okay.
of both parties showing up at the same time.
Councillor Kush?
So one question through to Andre, in regards to pulverizing roads, do we have any more that are slated that are supposed to be pulverized this year, or are we done with that program for the year?
Through Chair, Councilor Cush, we may do a little bit more pulverizing off the end of Foreign Road. There's a subdivision up there. We pulverized a segment of it last week. We may do a little more there, but I believe that's about it.
Is it something, just until we have more of a discussion on this for the councillors in that area, where we could possibly hold the pulverizing off, or is it something where the road's completely crumbled and we gotta do it?
We don't have to do anything. We can hold off. If we don't do it, it won't be the end of the world.
Just explain the pulverizing, why you were doing the pulverizing, since we're on this conversation.
To the chair of the council, why are we pulverizing? Number of reasons, that it could be the existing coal mix is just breaking apart. Overall, a lot of rutting, a lot of potholes, patching potholes on potholes. Those are the reasons why we go and we pulverize a section. For instance, Bison Road, we pulverized, I think a few hundred meters last year. We did more this year. If we don't have to pulverize, trust me, we don't want to. It increases our calls, it takes our staff away from other work, so. But that's why we're pulverizing.
Is there a way that you could supply the 2020 report to council on so it was 2019 or 2020 that we made
I
that?
believe it was.
There's gotta be that package in there. Can you just take that chunk and forward it to council so that they
Yep.
see what we saw?
Find it, yep.
And that way you don't have to make a new report or anything like that. Everybody's got the same information. And I know at the time, if I remember correctly, we were talking about in a cold mix road, it's difficult to patch, so you typically pulverize it, then scrape it up, then re-cold mix it if you're gonna go back to cold mix. So the idea behind pulverizing was that you could grate it with a grater and take the potholes out of it, and that would be less money in the short term.
Correct.
Okay. I think we've kind of gone down this pretty good. Councillor Dean?
Yeah, I just want to come back to the open house and format again. I think we've provided a lot of suggestions for admin. The last one is, I guess it's a question for admin and council. The purpose of the open house is to educate people on the new policy and take suggestions for change, is that correct? That if a good suggestion came along?
The original purpose of the open house was to communicate the winter maintenance standards and the road use agreements, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
And now we're kind of adding
Information.
we're adding an information session on level of service and also that pulverizing policy, but so we're getting outside of where we originally were. We'd be adding to it. But if we've got people there and we're having the opportunity to communicate, and it's a few minutes to put, really, if you're doing a presentation on what you're doing, it's a few minutes to put this together.
Yeah.
To communicate those ideas and asset management and, and again, these things have been in the works for years. And I'm I sit here meeting after meeting and it's very tough because I know what's going on in the background. I know eventually we're gonna be where we wanna be, but I don't think a lot of the residents are getting that communication piece. So, how do we communicate that piece?
Yeah, I guess, your worship, members of council, my understanding is we'll put an information sheet together, but that's not the focus of the meeting, right? Because, again, the winter maintenance coming up, you
Yeah.
want feedback on the new policy, and if you've met your expectations of your ratepayers, versus this item can be there and available to them. And then in the spring, based on your budget deliberations, to have other open forums to have communications in regards to that. Because unfortunately, we're not changing the policy, until the spring anyways. Like, we'll finish off this year and next year is based on the budget deliberations.
So that led me to the question that I was getting to. So we're asking for feedback on the policy. That's the intent of the meeting, right? So,
No, yeah.
so are we gonna, when we advertise this, in whatever form of advertising we use, are we gonna include a copy of the policy so residents can have a look at it before the meeting?
Oh, I'm sure, yes, yeah, it's available, right?
It'll
Yeah.
be available on our website.
Yeah,
Right, but in, like a link to it, so
Yeah,
that if somebody
that
sees this
typic-
meeting notice pop up, they can click on a link and it'll take them to the,
yeah, your worship, member through to Councillor Dean, yes, that's the normal process. Like,
okay, good, thanks.
Okay. Councilor Kush.
I move the CAO report for information.
oh. Well, I mean, could be done, but it's all up to you guys.
I'll withdraw that vote.
Thank you.
I'll go quickly though. So next week, we have customer training and that I'll be at for the 4th and 5th, the zone meeting on October 3rd, as well as coming up, and part of the communication strategy is infrastructure and communication, and came up with a snowplow naming and design contest that will begin in October and will run for 9 weeks. Similar to our, I shouldn't say similar, but again, trying to get our public involved in our, to understand our operations, so.
We're naming the snow plows, is that what you said?
That's correct.
So we're gonna have Plowy McPlowface?
If that's the winning one, yeah, absolutely, and we have 6 plows that we get to name, so.
Cool.
Yeah. At your next council meeting, you will have a new admin support that unfortunately I can't announce yet because I haven't seen a signed contract, but we've extended an offer to an individual. And we are concluded our interviews for the Director of Corporate Services. We've bringing up the individual to meet with us in person, as well as meet the finance department staff to get a feel for that individual, or individuals, I should say. There are 2 that we are looking at that are trying to arrange. We have 1 confirmed, the other one we're trying to work around that individual's schedule. October 18th, is it October 18th is our council's
No, 17th.
17th, sorry. For DISC that we're doing training for them. And as far as the zone convention, we made the assumption that all of council is going. We've also tentatively scheduled an evening dinner meeting with Lac St. Anne County to talk about things in general. That's part of the strategic plan. I reached out to actually, he reached, the CAO for Lac St. Anne reached out to me on another item, and we started having a conversation, and we thought that it would be a good opportunity to meet. And because of our schedules, we kind of said, well, let's maybe do a supper meeting the Monday night at the convention. So November 7th is tentatively that meeting. At the same time, I've also scheduled a meeting with Alberta Transportation at the convention that they've reached out. They've asked for two topics. We think one of the topics, and this is strictly up to council, that is making them again aware of the abutments on both the major bridges across the Athabasca at the fort in Blue Ridge and the erosion that is occurring there. And we'll have pictures, and then the other one, depending on council, is the secondary statuses of the secondary highways and the project planning for that. If that's acceptable to council, we would do that.
Yeah, good. Hard to narrow it down to 2 items.
Yeah, again, you only have, unfortunately, you only have 15 minutes. Yeah.
Councilor Dean?
Thank you. Question back to administration, more specifically for Corinne. You had sent out an email asking us to let you know of dates that we had booked. And I hear our CEO talking about the convention starting on the Monday, but there were a number of us that had registered for elected official courses. I just wanted to maybe make sure that you were aware of that.
Through the chair to council, I will follow up on everything that's booked, and I can circulate information back out on what I do have.
Okay.
Thank you for the heads up.
Yeah, you bet.
And I did reach out to Lynn O'Connell, and we've had a conversation, and she's getting me some more information along with communications and just to understand her requests. She's not meeting,
I spoke with her.
yeah. She's meeting with the ledge people in November, so. And that's it, Your Worship.
Okay. Any other
Oh,
questions? Or?
Sorry, I did have, on October 26th, Mr. World has been doing a lot of work with our financial information and our reserves. And we thought that it would be important to sit down with council on the 27th, which is a budget meeting at the same time, to have a general conversation about your directions of setting some type of policy for the level of reserves, where they should be at, and some of the parameters around how you establish reserves and the purpose of those reserves. So.
Can you add into that how we invest reserves? Because, and the reason that I bring this up, it wasn't really an issue when interest rates are low.
Right.
But when you have a municipal government act that restricts what a municipality can invest money in when they have money tied up in reserves, at the moment, to my understanding, is it's extremely restrictive to the point where we'd be seeing 3% on it, something like that.
We're
Yeah.
a little more than that, but.
But you're not keeping pace with the level of inflation.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely.
So if inflation's outpacing you, something's wrong. Now, that's a change that needs to happen at the MGA level, the Municipal Government Act level. So that may be a discussion around another resolution to RMA to get the government to back off on their. There's an opportunity, we could invest in the Heritage Fund. The Heritage Fund has been showing 11%, something like that, annual returns. This isn't just money that we're socking away under a mattress. We're responsible for the money regardless of where it is. And I don't think going backwards in value is a good investment strategy for reserves. And this is something that's really irritated me lately is trying to invest in the future and actually not being able to even keep pace with inflation. So I'd love to have a really good idea around, that, and then possibly a resolution to whatever the new GOA is gonna start looking like, because I think that's a huge piece. And I think also that the conversations that we've been having with the GOA, they're starting to really push asset management. Asset management means reserves. They're understanding the value of reserves and what they're for and why they're there, especially at the municipal level, you're not allowed to run deficits. At the provincial and the federal level, they just say, well, whatever, we'll overspend by a couple of $1 billion this year and we'll make it up somewhere in the future. We can't do that at a municipal level. We have to plan years in advance for some of this stuff. So I think there's a really key piece around that. And hopefully we can get some information on it, but I'd love to have that added to it. Councillor Dean.
Point well taken, Mr. Reeve. I'm just looking at my invitations that are received for Thursday, October 27th, and there's two invitations with respect to budget. One goes from 9 to 3:30, and the other one goes from 9 to 11.
It was supposed to be 9 to 11, about a 2-hour session.
That's what I thought. Okay, so
I thought it was 9 to noon myself, but.
sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so good. Thank you. I don't know if the rest of you guys have that.
What do you got?
Mine just is just 9 to 11.
I don't know where the other.
Does that conclude the CAO report, Mr. Frank?
Yes, Your Worship.
Okay. Any further questions to Mr. Frank? And if not, Councillor Cush?
Yeah, motion to accept the CAO report for information.
Very good. Any discussion on that? All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. That'll bring us to, where are we here? 11.1, so that's committee of the whole, so I'll get a motion to move into closed session, and after that we'll take a break. Councillor Prestige.
I'll make a motion that we move into closed session.
And that's under FOIT 21 and 17. Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried.